Hello, my friends in the Dinks world. Not my usual yell. A little bit down today. I gotta say that. Today was supposed to be my official move day into my new building, and once again postponed this time by the fire marshal. So, anyway, lots of fun stuff going on with that. But let's throw all that aside because this is Humpday Happy Hour. It is time for us to hang out. So, welcome to Humpday Happy Hour with Dentists in the Know. We are your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. We are live, and we are over a nice glass of wine tonight. Hopefully, bring my blood pressure down just a little bit. Maybe bring my heart rate down a little bit. Could use that right now. But what I really could use are my besties, Dr. Chad Duplantis and Dr. Jennifer Bell. The three of us are here to bring you in the know. We are all dentists. We are all business owners. We could all use a good financial planner, by the way. And we also happen to be educators. So in the realm of needing a good financial planner, that's who our guest is tonight. I am totally excited about this. He is not only an independent financial planner, but he is also the husband of a very good and dear friend, great clinician and educator, Dr. Jennifer Doobrow. Tonight we have Todd Doobrow, and we're going to be talking financial planning, all the mistakes that I've made, all the mistakes that Chad's made. And of course, Jennifer's the smart one. So probably not so many of those errors like me and Chad. But anyway, my besties, how you doing? Good to see you. And cheers.
I'm so sorry you're sad.
I'm all right. It's all right, dog.
I know, but still, our viewers like new content. That's all.
Yeah. Today I got to drive from with no patients on the schedule, by the way. They did work one set of impressions in for a new sleep appliance up at the Myrtle Beach office. So I got to go down to Myrtle's Inlet and get with the sprinkler person and the contractor and get with the fire alarm person. Right. And then I got to go to my Myrtle's Inlet office and put out the fires there because the team is just crazy right now. You know, you don't upset that apple cart 3 times where we're moving, we're not moving, get patients back on the schedule, take them off the schedule.
Right.
So that's happened a few times now. So I got to go over there, put out that fire. Then I had to go back, meet the temporary sign person who had some questions. Then I got to go up to Myrtle Beach and do the impressions for the new sleep appliance. Then I got to drive back to Myrtle's Inlet because I left my briefcase there.
Chad is not surprised.
Yeah, then back home. So a whole lot of nothing burger today as far as productivity, but hopefully things will be back on track. How about you guys? Chad, you just dropped one off at college, your youngest. You are a true empty nester now.
We are empty nesters. It was a very bittersweet moment. You know, we had all these plans. We were going to finish her room and take her to lunch and everything. And I think she realized that the inevitable was that no matter what, we were leaving. So we got to the dorm room this afternoon. And before we could get the words out of, can we take you to lunch? She looked at her 2 roommates and said, we're going to go to Target. Can we go in my room and say goodbye real quick? And it was kind of like, all right. And, you know, it's all this like, who's going to cry first? What are the tears going to be? There were a couple of wet eyes. And about halfway home, we stopped at McAllister's Deli just because there's not much in Oklahoma between Norman and Dallas-Fort Worth. And so we stopped at McAllister's, grabbed a sandwich. And that's when old dad lost it. In the middle of McAllister's Deli, like, holy crap. And then I got home and it was kind of like, you know what? I think I can dig this. This isn't too bad. So,
Chad, have you been whitening? You're extra bright. Did you turn your contrast up, or have you been whitening? Because Yeah, they're looking really white right now.
It might
Do
be
you not think so,
contrast because
JB?
I have not whitened or brightened or anything lately. No,
Using Brillo?
no, nothing new.
Okay.
Nothing new. I
Huh.
haven't even brushed in 3 days, so I don't know what's going on here. Yeah.
Well,
It might be
Chad
my new
Sad,
Lumi body deodorant.
yeah, nice. A little Lumi to keep things in check. JB, so Chad's sad. I'm sad. Are you sad?
I'm not sad.
Well, good. Are you going to give us depressing news?
I mean, I could. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I have,
Okay.
I always have depressing news. Actually, tonight's news is not overly depressing. There's can I just tell you, every week I sift through thousands of stories about dentists doing dumb things, stealing money, putting cameras in their staff bathroom, molesting girls in their office, running over their husbands. Like, it's kind of ridiculous at this point that I should have to sift through those stories to get to actually something that might be unique this week. Like, can we stop talking about the illegal dentists in hotel rooms, basements, church parking lots, whatever, the veneer techs, the stuff you get online? Like, it's actually becoming more difficult to find interesting news that isn't what we've already talked about. And that, I think our guest is actually going to talk a lot about the fact that we just start wanting to be like everybody else and repeat their same bad decisions. So that's one of the things I'm seeing, is also a lot of continuity in the news space for dentistry as well. So
yeah,
I don't know.
My uncle had an affair with his assistant. My dad had an affair with his assistant. Gosh dog it, I'm going to have an affair with my assistant.
I'm going to do it.
Oh my goodness. All right. I am happy to see you guys though. And Chad, I remember what that was like, dropping the last one off. So we're thinking about you.
Drop a couple dogs off while you were there.
Hey, yeah, well, I wish I could have, but this is a really funny story. I wouldn't say it's really funny, but anyways, it was interesting to me. So we, you hear about all these SEC football teams, and Oklahoma has been a great football team for years. I mean, there's no denying it. And I went to the University of Texas, so it's very hard to drop your daughter off at Oklahoma. So anyhow, yesterday, as we're pulling in, the orientation, the check-in was at the basketball arena. So as we pull into the basketball arena, it's right next to the practice field. And as we pull up to the practice field, there's all these players out there in crimson and white, and they're all suited up and they're running drills and everything. And my first inkling was, oh my God, they're letting a Pee-wee team play on OU's practice field. And so we drive by and I'm looking at these guys, and I hate to say it, they didn't seem that big. And so I was in the car by myself. I had nobody to talk to for 3 hours while we drove up there. So I call Ellen and Ava and I'm like, hey, did y'all see, the players on the field over there? And my daughter goes, they're so small. And it just cracked me up, because you see these guys on TV, and I mean, yes, they're not small, but when you're right next to them, they're not as big as they look on TV. Now they could probably kick my ass. I'm not going to say that, but it was very surreal to drive by and see all the coaches and all the players and all these guys out there. They didn't look that big. So my thought is maybe OU's going to suck this year.
Yeah. Yeah. In a football program, I'm actually 5'11" and 140.
Bench press 480. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Deadlift.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No spot.
Well, guys, I'm really excited because one of the things I think that we bring uniquely to the dental profession is we really have a lot of great contacts that we've made over the years with people who really can change our profession from the outside in, rather than just taking only dentists. There are so many great people out there that have unique perspective on dentistry that are able to help people. And, we meet them all the time. But in this case, we have an independent financial planner who happens to be married, to an educator, great clinician. And so I'm really excited to hear what he has to say, what he's observed just from Jennifer's, early tendencies with financial management to, to all the mistakes that, the three of us have openly talked about, some silly things that we wish we had done differently. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. So with that, let's do some news so we can bring Todd on.
You ready?
Can we do that?
Yeah. Do I hit hard right out the gate, or do I ease into the funny?
Ease into funny.
Got it. All right, team, let's go ahead and dive into it. Oh, actually, oddly enough, I can feel the news cycle starting to pick back up because, I was talking a couple of weeks ago how it was kind of slow. There's not a lot of activity. Dental news kind of takes a holiday when it comes to summer. So, we've really been scraping the barrel. Again, once I culled out the illegal dental operations, the sexual predators, the embezzlement stories, all that, than to actually find something of interest and not totally a downer like I've been told that I am. So let's get straight into it. It was not that long ago that we were talking about Kanye again on this podcast. As we know, Kanye had a titanium grill made. I did find out at the tune of $850,000 by a known to celebrity dentist, Dr. Thomas Connolly, out of Beverly Hills, California. Well, he's under a bit of heat now because an ex-chief of staff for Kanye has come forward to say that this particular dentist has been supplying Kanye with nitrous, maybe at not quite in not quite a legal fashion. So I foresee this going to court. I think Dr. Connolly is going to try to defend his good name and his ethical behavior, and that he hasn't been the one providing Kanye with that particular gas. There are TikToks and posts on various social media channels of Kanye actually on nitrous oxide at his home with the nose cannula in place, posting and talking to various individuals while under the influence on social media platforms. So it's no mystery that he is in fact using it in his private residence, but who's supplying it and how he's getting access to it will probably be up for the legal system to discern. I got to be honest, as I was reading the story, there's a lot of similarities. Nobody's going to like this, but a lot of similarities to the Michael Jackson story of the relationship that developed between a doctor and a famous person, and how the doctor maybe was trying to help the famous person deal with some other tragedies and mental health issues, etc. And, maybe they kind of build this relationship. Luckily, Kanye's story hasn't been quite the same as Michael Jackson's, but the story is very odd and some parallelisms for sure. So hopefully this will get vetted out. And, if Dr. Connolly is innocent, that he'll have his day in court to prove his ethical practice. We wish him well. I gotta be the alarmist here to tell you that it was just today that 2.7 billion records, mostly social security numbers of American citizens, was hacked, including email addresses, mailing addresses, phone numbers, and your social security number. The threat is that they'll share that information to other hackers. It will be leaked. I think that's actually already started to happen. Oddly enough, happening on the 89th anniversary today of the invention or beginning of Social Security here in the United States. On its 89th anniversary, all of our data has been stolen. I would suggest that you lock your credit to make sure that no one is getting access to it, because if you think for any hot second that your Social Security number is secure, I can assure you now, pretty much would have told you probably not a few days ago, but now feel really confident in saying that that information is no longer private anymore and is available to anyone on the globe. So that's really uplifting. I know the guys will be super pumped that I went with that story. Let's go into something a little bit more jovial. It's always funny when dentists make in the news for something very weird. It's almost like they need to identify that this person was a dentist when they do something weird or dumb. And this story is no exception. A dentist was arrested last week for throwing a burrito at her husband's face during a birthday dinner. Yes, they were celebrating a birthday dinner. It was late at night. She had sprung for Taco Bell and McDonald's. I'm kind of thinking maybe they did like my favorite food from each fast food scenario. Like I would get the burger from Burger King, the fries from McDonald's, maybe the nachos and cheese from Taco Bell with a Baja Blast. Like maybe you do like that epic dinner where you're like, here's every food from your favorite fast food restaurant. Either way, they had Taco Bell, McDonald's, and the next thing we know, a burrito was slung at the face of the husband. Now, the story gets a little muddy because somehow the cops get involved. When the cops show up, the burrito is still affixed to the face of the gentleman. She goes to jail. She's arrested that evening for assault and battery with a burrito, spends the night in jail, comes home the next day. And I guess they're just going to have to figure this one out, maybe in divorce court. Not 100% sure how this one's going to work, but we wish them both. I think they should have a repeat on best fast food foods. Maybe they can try this again for another birthday. The ADA did come out this week with a first official U.S. standard on AI in dentistry. We've sort of been operating in this very nebulous space where AI has sort of been making its own rules along the way. There's been a committee actively hard at work within the ADA comprising of a ton of doctors and industry experts throughout the U.S. to provide some standardization of what AI in dentistry should look like, benchmarks for what we should hold these companies and the technology to. The first U.S. standard has been posted. It is not official yet. Open comment period is until September 25th, I believe. If you want more information, go to the ADA website. Look for the AI standard to make sure that your voices are heard. If you have, a strong opinion or want to participate in the activity of AI standards in dentistry, I think, it's certainly important and a big part of where we're going. The last kind of interesting story of the week, which I never really thought I was going to be talking about, there has been an uptick of monkeypox outbreak, particularly in Africa. I don't think we're seeing it quite here in the US, but they're starting to see cases of it in Europe as well. So there was an article that was posted not that long ago out of the UK talking about what we should be looking for as dentists for monkeypox detection. It's odd to read the story. It's odd to read the article, actually, because it reminds me a lot of what I think the early days of HIV and AIDS discussions would have been like, where this seems like this is definitely a serum mucous membrane exchange disease, maybe not necessarily in sexual conduct or AV exchange, but some type of pretty intimate contact. But the other piece of it would be familiarizing yourself with what the oral lesions would look like, because that is one of its main presentations. Well, that and the rectum, but I'm going to stick to the oral examination. So you may, I guess it's possible that if we do start to see an uptick of those cases here in the US, you might see those lesions populate, and certainly would need to be familiar with the disease and taking those precautions to ensure that you are protected from spread of that particular virus. This news was weird, honestly, tonight. I feel good about the content, and at the same time, I feel very uncomfortable with most of the stories I shared with you. In a brief synopsis, it's your Social Security is now compromised, burritos can be dangerous, and monkeypox are on the loose. And with that, that's the news.
Kanye, monkeypox, and burritos.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a night.
Not sure where to go with that. The thing that I think is running through my mind, and probably will most of our viewers, is how much starch must be in that thing for it to be still affixed to the face, for a burrito to stay affixed to the face. Right. I'm thinking.
Or can you imagine like a hyper dramatic person just keep like sticking it back on until the cops show up? Because without it on your face, is there evidence of an assault? Like if you beat someone, they have a bloody, a black eye. If you shoot them, there's a hole. If you get hit with a burrito, like you need sour cream, meat, lettuce, like you need it on the face to really plead your case.
Yeah, I don't think that the news will ever have a shortage of dentists that do dumb shit.
Mhm.
It's just what it is.
No, no.
So I can
All
tell you
right.
one thing: nobody's getting addicted to nitrous in my office. I hate nitrous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get to know Chad. I'm glad you put it on record.
Just not a
Just in
fan.
case.
Just not a
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah. Well, it does make it hard to prep teeth.
Yeah.
It's like
Facts.
yeah. So,
Mhm.
all right, introduce our guest. We got a good one, so let's do it.
All right. Jeff, you bring him up while I introduce him. But
Okay.
so Todd and I have briefly had some encounters over the past couple years. As mentioned before, he is married to kind of a famous dentist, but anyhow, Todd's kind of famous in his own right. He's an independent certified financial planner, fiduciary who has worked with dental and medical professionals and their teams for more than a decade. He sees the life of the dentist firsthand as his wife is a periodontist in Cullman, Alabama, but he also has entrenched himself in his clients' practices to focus on financial efficiency. In addition to his CFP designation, he also holds a retirement income certified planner and a chartered financial consultant designation, as well as a registered principal. Hold on. Somebody is talking in the background. Is anybody doing that? Sorry. Apologize for that. I could hear something going on in the background. It might have been me. He's a registered representative, Series 7, and an investment advisor representative, Series 65, as well as being life, accident, and health insurance licensed. One of the things I want to tell you about Todd, in addition to all of his accolades, is we already know that he's got a pretty awesome wife. He's a pretty awesome dude, but he's got this son that is a pretty amazing golfer. And I told Todd last week that my dream is to play golf with Hampton sometime. I think, is it true that I saw today or recently that Hampton started high school?
You did. He's second day of ninth grade.
That's pretty awesome, man. Well, congratulations on that. And congratulations on all of your accolades. And
I feel like he was just bar mitzvahed.
Yeah.
Congratulations
Yeah.
to Jennifer for being married to such an awesome guy, because you know what? We're going to talk about you tonight and not her. So there we go.
I say it all the time, Chad. She either has a very high pain tolerance or very bad aim.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll say
get
hi.
her on the record later.
JB, just don't give her any burritos and we'll be all right.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. I didn't know burritos were really the assault crime of dentistry.
Nothing I say tonight is going to top that. That's the.
I know. When I read the story, I was like,
in a long
it's the
time.
dumbest story that I absolutely have to read
Oh,
tonight.
yeah.
It's at least different from the other stories are stole money, cameras in bathrooms, molested a girl, like it just goes on and on. You're like, these stories have
But does that not now become like a real threat that you can use? Like even when your kids, don't you make me take you to Taco Bell.
Well, that's a whole different kind of threat.
Yeah. Well, so I think this is a very pertinent topic because there are a lot of dentists that, quite frankly, aren't good with money. Like Jeff said, there may be a couple here, one that's probably not, but we're not talking about me tonight. So, let's talk about the other two. But what encouraged you to start working with dental and medical professionals? Is it your, was it Jennifer, or did you see a need, or what's going on?
Yeah. So I started in the industry in the late 90s, early 2000s in Atlanta. And long story short, I got partnered up with a guy who had a very impressive book of business with professional athletes and management from UPSers who just went public. So these guys literally woke up overnight millionaires. And taking a very long story and condensing it down to a few sentences, that's where I met my wife, Jennifer, was in Atlanta. I followed her to Charleston, South Carolina, while she went to dental school at MUSC. And then when we were coming back to Birmingham, Alabama for her residency, as most of people know here who have followed along with the podcast, Her father actually passed away between her first and second year of residency. So I had to sell my book and sell my practice back to my partner, run some other businesses that the family was involved with. And once I got that cleaned up, I knew I wanted to get back into financial planning, and I really didn't have any idea who or what I was going to work with, because as nice as Birmingham, Alabama is, there aren't a bunch of NFL players running around here.
Sure.
So I was talking to our attorney and one of our accountants who helped us with all of the fallout from our father's passing. And he basically pulled me by the back of the neck and said, hey, dummy, look what happened because one of these doctors didn't do the things that you thought and assumed that they did. That's who you need to work with. So I went back. I had to take all of my licenses again. I had to take all of my exams again. In the dental world, that means imagine being out of school for 10 years and then getting to go back and take boards twice. So that's what I got to do. Started back about 12 years and just said, this is what I'm really going to focus on, because look what happened to me, because one of those docs wasn't quite at the level that we thought they should have been. And ever since then, we've been running.
Well, and you were someone with a financial background. Imagine if that happens within a family where there's just nobody with any, financial knowledge or business.
And Jeff, usually what we find is one person knows everything and the other person knows nothing. And sadly, it's usually the person who knows everything that something happens to.
Very interesting.
So, we went back and forth on topics for tonight and on a title. And I want you to talk a little bit about, kind of what you came up with and why you zoned in on that. So,
yeah. So as we work more and more with doctors and dentists, talking about retirement planning, talking about student loans, talking about buying it, that's all kind of table stakes at this point of the game. There's a million people out there who can help you with that. I'll challenge that the challenge and the problems that arise with owning a dental practice are unique, and you do need to know them. But what's a bigger hurdle that we're finding right now is really the mentality and the belief system of a lot of these dentists that translate into their behaviors that they have with their money. And so, Chad, to kind of answer your question, we've been talking a lot lately about the psychology of money, the human side of money, not just, what did the S&P do over the last 30 days?
So, it was funny. We were talking about that last week when I called, and you were like, "Oh yeah, what a time." Speaking of what the S&P did over the past 30 days, what kind of an impact do you feel that, or maybe I should say, what the S&P did over the last 10 days? What kind of an impact do you feel that should have had on a lot of people, and what happened in your practice?
Yeah. So the impact that I think it should have had on a lot of people is really nothing more than reflecting how comfortable are they with their true investment plan and their investment philosophy, right? When you get all the semiconductors that are running and everything's going up 20 and 30%, people are going, man, more, just give me that. You lose 2%, 3% in one day, and everyone's panicking and running for the hills. And, am I invested the right way? Do I have too much of this? Do I have too much of that? So days like that, look, it's 1,000 points. 1,000 points was a much bigger deal when the S&P was at 8,000, not when it's at 40,000. But it did get some people to look in the mirror and finally say, maybe I am a little bit out over my skis, especially for those who are approaching the retirement. If you've got retirement in the next 5 years or so, depending on what you have and what you want, it's probably time to dial back a little bit. But because of this incredible recency bias, take out 2022 and, the market's done nothing but go up and to the right for the past decade, people they get content. They just want to stay the course.
So
what do you think? Oh, sorry, Jen.
No,
what
please,
do you think
baby.
some of the, for dentists that are chugging along, we'll take an average life cycle of a dentist. It's dental school now, pretty significant debt, couple years of group practice, get your skills up. Maybe partner in, open your own, do your own single shingle for a bit, and then, either ride that out, sell it at some point, whatever. and then hope to retire at some point. What do you think some of the blind spots are during that progression, that life cycle for a dentist for their career, that they should really be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think it starts really towards the end of dental school when they start looking for that first job, right? And there's 15 different paths that they can go, and there's not one right one and there's not wrong one. Everyone has a different story. But that's what they fail to realize a lot of times, is that my story is different than your story. So, just last week, we're trying to help a young doc buy into a practice, and the selling doctor wants them to associate for a while. So the doc offered, in my mind, what was a very fair, guaranteed per day salary. And the young doc called me and said, well, I don't really think that's right. Okay, doc, tell me why. Well, because I was talking to my friend at lunch, and they told me that this person is getting a deal that's almost twice as much as mine. Okay, well, where is that deal? And it's Atlanta, Georgia, right? I don't mind saying it.
Yeah.
It's in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, the cost of living in Atlanta, Georgia is very different than the cost of living in a very, very rural town in Alabama, right? And so the difference between that offer and this person's offer wasn't even that big. They just didn't like it because it wasn't what the other person was getting, right? So, and the practice that we're trying to put this young doctor in, there is a clear path to associateship. There's a clear path to partnership. There's a clear path to buying that doctor out, which in this day and age is very rare to find, because a lot of people are looking, to places with bigger pockets that can make it happen automatically. So we're trying to get this doc to see, focus on your story and what's in front of you. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing right now.
I think that's a
huge
ahead,
problem. No, I just think it's a huge problem in life. And I think it's especially, it's a problem amongst young graduates as well, as to, you're always trying to compare yourself to somebody else. And I think that's a great piece of advice that you gave that young doctor. And Jeff, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it was just a follow-up about the psychology of finance and the psychology of keeping up with the person next to me, the guy who sat next to me in dental school. And I guess what my question is, we see that throughout careers. So, people will show up at the local dental meetings and, oh, he's got a Mercedes. He's got a Mercedes. He's got a Mercedes. Should I be driving a Mercedes? They have Land Rovers. Should I be driving a Land Rover? And I know keeping up with the Joneses is something that happens far outside of the scope of dentistry, but I find it a little bit more profound within our profession. And just what you said, that we all think that if I see another doctor that's lecturing, that, my God, I need to be lecturing, or I need to be buying up other practices, and it becomes this thing where we kind of jump out and start doing things to copy more so than with an intentional financial plan. So where does that financial plan start, and how does that kind of thinking, how do we alter that kind of keeping up with the Joneses kind of thinking?
Right. So here's a couple fun stats for you, right? While we're on this podcast, let everyone learn something. The average person has between 40 and 70,000 thoughts in a day. Okay. 80% of those are negative, and almost 90% of those are repetitive by the age of 33. Right. So if you're going to break out of that mentality, you've got to be very, very intentional about making that decision of, I don't care that other doctor is driving a Mercedes. I want to, right? And this is the way I personally think about it. I don't care about driving a Mercedes, because every one of those monthly payments that I would make on a Mercedes is between 4 and 6 weeks earlier that I get to retire. Right. So that's the way my mind works when it comes to stuff like that. The other thing, Jeff, is not many people really know what that number is, because they've never really sat down and put it into a meaningful context, right? If you want to retire at the lake, living on your family's property in the 1-bedroom cabin that's been in your family for generations, that's one kind of retirement. If you want to go buy a penthouse on South Beach and you're driving an S-Class and your wife is driving a BMW 7 Series, that's a whole different kind of retirement, right? So how do you go about coming up with that number, and what are you ultimately doing to get there? And that's the biggest blind spot that we see with most docs is they do their own thing through high school, which we've talked about. They did their own thing through college. They kind of start comparing themselves to everyone in dental school. While they're working, they want to do the exact same thing as every one of their peers. But then when it gets back to the end game, well, I want to retire this way and you want to retire that way. But the one time when they should be focusing the most on their wants and their desires and their dreams, when they're working and making the cash flow, is when they're pointing to their buddies going, hey, well, what are you doing? I'm just going to do that.
So when a doctor's looking, and it could be young, we can break it apart into pieces if you want, based on like career ages or whatever. I have found it always very difficult to surround yourself with a team that's working cohesively for your good. You know, it's your CPA, it's your financial planner, it's a consultant maybe, or, you know, whatever, like having everybody kind of rowing in the same direction at the same time and making solid recommendations and kind of, you know, balancing things off of one another. And not everybody's right, not everybody's wrong, but we're all sort of making recommendations to sort of move in the same direction. And it's taken a really long time for me to put myself in a position where I'm surrounded with a team that I feel like I can trust, that everybody's end goal is that, you know, that we would like to retire comfortably. And so do you have any advice for doctors, maybe young doctors and then middle-aged doctors, and not age, but practice life, and then maybe getting closer to retirement age doctors, of like how they find that team of people? Well, I guess one, how do they build the philosophy of what they want? And then how do you surround yourself with people that are going to sort of support that journey with you along the way?
Yeah. So finding all of those people, a CPA, a banker, an attorney, a financial planner. I mean, it's like dating, right? I mean, you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find the one you're willing to sit down with. You know, I try to tell people, go out and interview. I want you to interview a bunch of people. I want you to talk to everybody, because sometimes you got to see what else is out there before you realize, hey, maybe this person was the right one. I just didn't really know about it. And sadly, for most dentists, regardless of their life cycle or where they are, they had a college buddy, they had a frat brother, they had an uncle who works for one of these big conglomerate companies, and we all know who they are. And every time that person talked to them, it was always about trying to get them to buy this product or get them to put more money in this. And eventually the dentist is like, you know what? I don't want that. And I've told you 10 times I don't want it, but they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So sadly, for most dentists, their first interaction with someone in this world is it's not usually a good one. Mm-hmm. Right. So then you've got to take that 2 to 3 year kind of recovery period for them to be a little successful. And then they go, okay, well, I know I need some help now. Let me go and try to talk to some other people. In terms of how do you find the cohesive team, you know, I've got some CPA partners who I like. I've got some attorneys who I like. Everyone is in different states. We've got clients. I think we're in 19 or 20 states now. I'm not sure exactly what the number is. But most people like to use their own local attorney or CPA, and that's fine with me. We've actually gotten to the point now where we take 1 month out of the year. It's usually the middle of October to the middle of November to just meet with the dentists and their CPAs, because over the years, we've seen too many of our clients get the CPA, you should have done this last year.
Exactly.
Right. And it just costs them too much money. Yeah. So we've gotten to the point now where we try not to do a lot of our annual review meetings during that 1 month period, because we just said, look, it's easier for us to spearhead the meeting and make sure it happens so our clients don't get caught up in that, than to hear them complain that it cost them 50, 60 grand because they weren't informed of it until March, of the next year.
Absolutely.
The other side of the people that or that are in your circles that are selling individual products, working with a particular firm. The other side of that is, I think a lot of people also, when they move to a community, will find a group of people and become friends with people who may be planners, And then that friendship becomes such a tight friendship that the planner fails to really be a true planner. And I'm saying this because this was actually the case for me, is that I had a very close friend, and there is nothing that he wanted for me than to be successful, great guy, but he also would not nudge me. He would not, he's like, Jeff, you got this. You're doing everything right. You're doing everything right. I don't want to hear I'm doing everything right. I want you to tell me what I'm doing wrong. I want you to tell me what I should be doing differently. I mean, yeah, I've gotten lucky a couple of times, but I don't think that I started out with a really good plan and good direction. And really, so for a while, it was that I didn't get as much advice as I should because they were afraid of doing something to that friendship. So, I mean, I see that as a problem too. So how do you avoid that when you're just getting out and you're looking to put this team together?
Yeah. So, that's on the dentist end, you've just got to ask around, and you've got to talk to people, and you've got to sit in on webinars like this. And, you can ask whoever it is you want for referrals to know, who really knows the business and who doesn't. That the finding of the team is a very, very personal thing. The other half of your question is, how do you know you're getting, the real advice, the true advice, whatever? Well, one thing that I do know about, since working with you guys for a decade plus, is that most dentists are very visual creatures, right? I can tell them something and they shake their head yes. It probably went in one ear and out the other, because they're already thinking about the next patient they've got, the front desk situation that's going on, right? There's something else is in their head. So what we've done is we've created our financial planning software to be very, very, not basic, because we can drill and get into some very significant details, but it's very visual and it's very green or red, right? So, you have a buddy who is a life insurance salesman, and life insurance is important. There's no doubt about it. But when it's pushed and pushed and pushed, and you go, man, just leave me alone, I don't even want it, right? That changes the tone of a situation. If you sit down though, Jeff, and we go through your kind of personal financial situation and what it is you want to do, right? Do you want to pay for your kids to go to college? Do you want to pay for the house? Do you want to pay for Merle's Inlet? Right? You tell me what you want to do. If you get run over by a bus tomorrow, we're going to push a button and that number is going to generate out. And it may be bigger than you thought or smaller than you thought, but hey, here's what you told me you're doing. Here's what you want. Here's what the number is. Take it or not. So it's a very different feel in our office. We try to keep it no more formal than we are right now, right? We're not the black suit, white shirt, red tie, mahogany and leather. That's not who we are, at least. Again, it's not bad. It works for some people, but that's just not the approach that we take, because we want our advice to have the same feeling as our conversations.
I think it's really important. Sorry, Jen. I think it's super important. We coach patients through very vulnerable situations every day. They come in, they haven't been to a dentist for 5-10 years. The shame that's on their face and in their hearts to show up. They finally show up and take it on the chin, and they're like, I'm going to take the judgment and the blame and all the stuff. And I think a lot of dentists are also super guilty of the same. Many people are really, of like, I'm ashamed of my finances. I'm ashamed of where I am. I'm ashamed of where I want to go, or I've been neglectful for a long time and I've sort of let it get out of control. Because it's like being told you have cancer. If you kind of suspect maybe you have something, you don't actually want to hear it. Because once you hear it, you've got to do something about it, right? You have to change your behavior. You have to change your lifestyle, whatever. When you sit down with folks, talk to us a little bit about that vulnerability process. How you walk people through that exposure and, and sort of help guide them into the next steps.
So I just, for everyone listening, I did not pay her to ask that question, but man, I love it. I wish you could see the goosebumps on my arms right now. About 2 years ago, I actually changed the name of our company.
It's actually monkeypox.
That's right. Wonderful. About 2 years ago, I actually changed the name of my company, and we changed it to the Latin word that means to cure and to treat. And it was actually off a comment that one of our clients made to us after we had gone through the entire process. He looked at me and he goes, "Hey, Todd, what you do and what I do really aren't that different. We just have different techniques and different tools to do it." And I looked at him and I was like, well, okay, talk to me. And he says, when I came in, I had to tell you what I'd already done. I had to tell you what I've already had in place. You had to take a minute to analyze all that and put it together and come up with a treatment plan. Right. And now you want to see me every 6 months to make sure that treatment plan is working. He's like, that's exactly what we do with patients in our chair. So it is literally the exact same thing. And it goes one step farther, JB, is if you're a patient and all you do is brush and floss, you're going to keep cavities at bay. You're going to keep most of the stuff at bay. But unless you go in for a check, you don't know if you've got gingival recession. You don't know if you've got a cavity forming and it just hasn't cut right. Finances are the exact same way. You might know to save some money every month and you're putting stuff aside. But unless you have someone really look into the details who knows what they're doing, you might have an estate planning issue. You may have a long-term care issue. You may have a retirement funding issue, right? There's all these things that can boil up under the surface that most people don't know because it's just beyond brushing and flossing.
Well, and let's be honest, the rules change all the time.
The rules change.
Right. Which also is in our world. Regulations and how we're allowed to operate change constantly. And your world is no different. What we knew to be true a year ago, 2 years, 10 years ago, like the Social Security story where everybody's numbers got compromised today on its 89th anniversary, it's projected to be bankrupt at a certain period of time. So how do you plan for that? How do you, and then if that needle moves, if the date changes, it gets shorter, it gets longer, how are we adjusting for that? So it's a constant moving target, I would imagine. And
so let's bring it full circle. Jeff, your comment before about this person drives a Mercedes, should I drive a Mercedes as well? Well, if we put together that retirement plan and you've already got enough money in the bank to take care of your retirement dreams, hey man, go buy the Mercedes. I'm not gonna tell you not to. But if you're, 32 years old with $400,000 in student loans still, and one day you want to hang that single shingle, no, don't buy it. That's silly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. But it takes someone to look them in the face and say, that's not a good idea.
So I have two questions. And I'm going to hold on to the second one for last, but I just want everybody to remember the word green dentist. Okay. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But the first question is that, this is something that we get approached with a lot as dentists, as practice owners. And I think Jeff and JB and I can all relate to this, where you've got somebody that comes to you with something that's a startup or got great potential and they're looking for investors and you can flip your money and you can make all this and all that. And I think we've all gotten in on some that were really good. And we've all gotten in on some, probably the majority of them, that really weren't so good. Now, if you had a dentist or anybody that came to you and said, hey, I've got this friend that's, and this is another thing, everybody's doing it, John down the street, chimed in. He put in 7,500. He put in 15,000. He put in 120,000. If you've got somebody that comes to you, which a lot of us don't have the foresight to, because you're just jumping ahead. But if you have somebody that comes to you and says, hey, I've got so-and-so that's got this opportunity, what would you tell them that they should look at, or what would you look at in order to say yay or nay on it? So does that question make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It makes even more sense because I had this exact same phone call with last night with one of our oral surgeon clients who calls me up and says, hey, I'm thinking about investing $50,000 in, of all things, a new energy drink.
Okay.
And the doctor was very excited about a new energy drink. And when I asked, why do you want to invest? The answer was, well, because all my friends and family are investing in it as well. And I don't want to be the one left out. Now, as we started off this call, I've got a 9th grader. And if you know anything about high school kids, they all drink energy drinks. So your ears kind of perk up. If you go to the grocery store right now, it used to be Monster and Red Bull. And there are so many energy drinks right now out on the market. You don't even know the difference between this one and that one. So when I started pushing the doc about, what's going to make this one stand out, I have no idea. I don't know. Well, then why are you going to do it? Well, because everyone else is doing it. Well, the other side of that story is this person's family does very well. One of them already sold to a private equity group a few years ago and got more money in that deal than they could ever spend. So they've got money burning a hole in their pocket. Our client is still a practicing doctor. So the way I like to think about it, Chad, is like this. If you're going to invest $25,000 or $50,000 into a startup deal, take a minute and reverse engineer the math. How much dentistry do you have to do to make $25,000 or $50,000 after taxes? And if it's something that you're comfortable doing, go for it. And if not, there's your answer right there. Right. But a lot of people just see dollars in the bank. They don't think about the work that it takes them to get there.
So, it's interesting that you happen to mention an energy drink. I had a buddy a few years ago, and his dad started a company that we've all heard of called Celsius.
Mm-hmm.
And Celsius ran into a few troubles a few years ago, but this kid was the youngest kid. We're going to use the word green again, the greenest kid you've ever met. Cheapest guy, love him dearly. I actually envy how little money they spent as a young married couple. And his dad sells out of Celsius, and good God, just, look his dad up and see what he's worth right now. He did pretty well for himself. And now I don't think this young kid who was a newlywed at the time has anything to worry about for the rest of his life. But, if I heard energy drink, I'd probably be, I'm in. So I'm with you. But, I love the way that you answered that question, because I don't think a lot of us think that way, as to how much is it going to take you to recoup that investment. And if it hits, great. If not, and if you're comfortable with it, great. If not, then don't do it.
Yeah.
I wish that a lot of us would take heed to that advice, but that's where the green dentist comes in. And I mentioned that earlier. We don't get a lot of patients that are a clean slate.
Mm-hmm.
We usually get somebody with some preconceived notion as to what dentistry is. They have in their mind what they've done their whole lives. By the time that they can actually make decisions for themselves, they have this preconceived notion. But in your case, I would say, at least what I would see is, I see a lot of people coming out of dental school that are green and that don't really know. And so what are some things that you would tell a young dentist that's coming out, that's just getting started on this journey? What are a few pearls that you would give them in order to make most and to maximize their earning and saving potential throughout their career?
Yep. So first of all, and this is in our world, right? Here's a little nugget that everyone out there can use, regardless of where you are in your work lifespan. If you want to know who someone is, go to their website, go to their company website, and scroll all the way down to the bottom. And there should be 3 or 4 little paragraphs of small print that none of us ever bother to read because it's just not important. Well, there are a lot of companies out there that practice under what are called DBAs, doing business as. So you could get a company that is named, and I'm just going to make one up because Jeff was talking about South Carolina before, called South Carolina Dentist Financial Advisors, right? And that may sound perfect. And you log onto their website and you scroll down to the bottom, and in very small print, it could say South Carolina Dental Financial Advisors is a doing business name as one of those companies that we were talking about before, right? So again, it's not a bad thing. It's not, the companies aren't bad. The products aren't necessarily bad, but the term financial planner gets thrown around a lot, especially by people who aren't really financial planners. They're product salesmen masquerading as financial planners. So that's my step 1 tip is take a minute, look into who you're working with, find out who that company really is, and that will answer a lot of questions before you even get started, right?
So I've got a piggyback question to Chad. I'm sorry, were you finished with?
No, but go ahead. It's fine. We can take a break. Go ahead.
So piggyback to what Chad was saying, I would like to know, and this will be a generalization for you because I know you've had a lot of clients over the years. What would you say is the single biggest financial mistake that people make? And let's divide it out: young dentist, mid-career, or pre-retirement, what would you say? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but just, think about some of the cases you worked with. What would you say are some of the biggest problems that you've seen repeatedly?
Yeah. So young dentists, I think we've covered pretty clearly right now. It's worrying about what everybody else is doing and not focusing enough on what it is they want. Mid-career, honestly, the biggest mistake people make is just time allocation. Every time I talk to someone or, someone wants me to call them, they never have time. They're always busy. They've got this, they've got that. One of my favorite statistics as we're running into this time of the year is a college football game takes how long? 4 hours, right? Chad, you were talking about seeing the players before. 4 hours just for the game. If you go to the game, you're leaving 3-4 hours early, you're tailgating, you're going to the game, you're sitting in traffic on the way. I mean, that's a 10-hour experience start to finish, right? You don't have an hour to talk to me throughout the year about financial planning. Like, I get it. It's not as much fun as football is, but I want a 10th of the time for something that's going to last 30 years. Meanwhile, you're taking 10 hours to go watch a game that's going to be over tomorrow, and you still have to wake up on Sunday and get back to your normal life. Right. So really just a misalignment of priorities in your mid-career is, I guess that's a nice way to sum that up. And then as you get towards, call it that 5-year out of retirement, if you own your practice, starting to look for whatever your exit strategy is, if it's going to be an associate, we say you need to find that person about 5 years ahead of time, because most of the time you want them in your practice for a year. If things don't work out and you have to break up or let them go, it's going to be another year before you can go through the cycle again. Then a third year for the new associate to come on, right? Then the 4th year, maybe they start buying in. Then the 5th year you transition. So one of the big mistakes we make is they call us on Friday and they're like, "Hey, I'm ready to sell." Okay, when? Well, how about Monday or Tuesday? Right? And it's like, that's not quite how that works. So about 5 years out, what's the next step going to be? How are you going to get out? And then really, really, really starting to put pen to paper in terms of cash flow and the lifestyle that you want to live, right? We all talk about when your retirement income and what it is we're going to live on and what's it going to look like. Well, if you've made it there, 5 years out ahead of time, you don't need to worry about going back to what we talked about before, what the S&P 500 is doing. You need to dial it back a little bit and focus more on not losing it instead of hitting triples and home runs, right? We just need singles and doubles to get you where you want to be. And then all the other stuff, Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, that's all part of the process as well. But just not having that plan and going into retirement with a lot of uncertainty around those things just causes a lot of unneeded anxiety.
I think money in general causes anxiety.
But,
and
Chad, it does. But if you have an idea,
lack of money causes anxiety.
Yeah.
Chad, if we find the anxiety comes from not knowing what it's doing and not knowing the purpose for it.
Yep.
Right. We talk about decisions that you can make are kind of on a spectrum. And if something is definitely going to happen, or if something, there's no way it's going to happen, those two things don't bother you as much. But when you get in that middle ground of, well, it could happen or it might happen or whatever, that's your way of telling me we've never really looked at it and addressed it in a meaningful way. Right? I don't know if I'm going to get hit by a bus or not tomorrow, but I do know if I am, my family's going to be just fine.
And that
right
is a wonderful message that I think we could probably close with, because we're coming up on the hour, but that is a great message. And I know it's not what we want to think about, but that says a lot. If something happens to me tomorrow, my family's going to be taken care of, and that's a really important thing to talk to any dentist about at any given time in their career, is that nobody wants to leave their family, in a worse situation. Chad,
I'll say this and then I'll wrap it up. What's funny is everyone says, well, it's not going to happen to me, right? I'm good. I don't need it. It's not going to happen to me. Yet every day we open the newspaper and we see a plane crash, someone passed away of cancer, like all these things, it happens to somebody. And I promise you that person also said, it's not going to happen to me, but it does. And it did.
Burritos go flying.
Yeah.
Burritos go
You
flying.
don't know when that's going down.
I don't think that's covered by most disability insurance policies, just in case anyone's getting any
No, I
ideas.
know. And what about a churro? Like that's unforgiving.
Churro could poke
Burritos
your eye.
can be deadly.
A churro could poke your eye out. Then you,
Yeah,
then you
that's
might
a
be,
whole,
then you might
like,
be onto something.
Christmas
Yeah.
story scenario.
There is an ICD code for injury by food.
See? Now
Yeah.
it's covered by your medical insurance.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we have had a jam-packed hour, and Todd, I can't thank you enough for accepting the invitation to be here tonight. It was
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
We will put in the comments and post some information about how you can get in touch with Todd. I'm sure you're always accepting new clients. If you're not, let us know. But or maybe point them in the right direction if nothing else. But and if you have any burning financial questions, we'll post them as well. So feel free to send them to us, and we'll make sure that Todd gets them, and we'll figure out a way to get them answered. But thank you so much for being here tonight. I think the moral of the story is there's a lot of psychology to our financial decisions. And I think there's a lot that we can learn throughout our lives financially that can benefit us in the long run. Todd, thank you so much for being here, and I hope everybody has a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Good night,
Thank you
everybody.
all.
Hey, Todd, stay on our site because people always have financial questions. So
Yeah.
Stay tuned on our Insta or Facebook page because people are always throwing questions up. So we love when people like you are there to actually guide them.
There was actually a question today talking about a lot of the information that you were talking about that you might be able to help this one doctor out to streamline things. So we'll tag you in that post. So thank you all very much. Appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Made the decorating tips for my tent.